This podcast is produced by the Harwood Productions Podcast Network. To learn more about the network and to find more of our shows, visit us online at www.harwoodpodcast.com. To find out how you can help kickstart our latest show, Live from Bay 6, visit our website and click on the Kickstarter button. This episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox, is brought to you by 3D Connection, makers of the Space Navigator. To learn more about them, visit their website at www.3dconnection.com. Hey there everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm Cameron Harris, and this is episode number 26. Now, today we're going to continue our series on modeling a small house by starting to work on the doors, doorways, and the windows. Now, you might recall we had a similar episode on doors and windows back when we were doing our project, the small living room project. But today we're going to go in a little bit deeper. Now remember that in our last episode we modeled the floors and the walls that we're going to be working with today to model our doors and windows. Now if you don't have that model, you can download the model as it is right now from our website. Just go to the show notes for this particular episode, download the lesson file, and you'll be able to follow along with us today. So let's just dive right in. Now you might recall that in one of our earlier projects where we were working on just a simple living room, we actually covered how to create doorways and windows, essentially just punching holes through walls. Now I'm going to show you how to do a slightly more complex but more controlled version of that, where you can actually make shapes other than just simple, squares and rectangles. And I'm also going to show you how you can actually add an actual door or an actual window into that hole. Not just a hole, it's actually going to have a door and a window in it. So let's get started with that. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to show you how to make just a simple doorway, just give you a little bit of a refresher course. So for example, let's say we have these two rooms here. We've got this room here and this room here. Let's say we want to have open doorways connecting these two out into the main hallway. Now, of course, one way, and the simple way that we've used in the past to create a doorway, is to just draw a rectangle and push it back. So let me show you how you can do that. Let's say we want to have this doorway centered on this wall. What I'll do is I'll hit the T key to switch to the tape measure tool, click on this side wall here, and pull out a guide. And just at the bottom here, it can be at the bottom or the top, doesn't really matter, but you'll notice that my tape measure has snapped to that little, you can't really see it because my cursor is covering it, but it's a little kind of light blue dot. And that basically means that that is at the dead center of this wall right here. Right there is the center of this wall. And if I click there, you can see it says 4.5 feet. 4 feet 6 inches. It just snaps for you, which is very nice. So there we go. Now we've got a nice guide right at the center. Now let's say we want this doorway to be 3 feet wide. And, let's go with 6.5 feet tall. What I could do is I could create a rectangle starting at this center point here, but I want this doorway to be centered. So what I'll do is I'll draw two rectangles, one that goes 1.5 feet this way, and the other one that goes 1.5 feet this way. And then I'll have a doorway that's 3 feet wide and exactly centered. So what I'll do is I'll just type in 1.5 feet by 6.5 feet. There we go. So now I've got that, and I'll just do the same thing. There we go. So now I've got a perfect doorway that's centered right here, or at least the potential of a doorway, but I've still got these as two separate faces. So I'll just select that middle line, delete it, and I'll tell you what, I'll delete the guide too. And now what I can do is I can use the push-pull tool, and I'll actually push it back into the wall, and once it snaps and you see the wall go purple, that means that you're right on the other side of the wall. Click once and it gets rid of that other side of the wall, and now you've got a nice doorway to go through. Perfect. So that's very nice, very cool, but there's a more interesting way to do this. You'll notice that what we did here is we just had these two faces here that we then combined to make one big face. You need to have one big face that you want to pull back. Now what we can do here is we can actually make this doorway a little bit shorter and add an arch to it and make it an arched doorway. Let me show you how we can do that. So to start with, the arch is going to make the doorway taller. So we're going to start by just doing a simple rectangle doorway, just like we did before. But in this case, we're going to make it only, let's make it 5.5 feet tall instead of 6.5. So we will type in 1.5 feet wide. Still want it to be 3 feet wide. And then 5.5 feet tall. And I'll do the same thing over here. 5.5 feet by 1.5 feet. There we go. And now, I'm going to go ahead and delete this guide here. Now I can use the arc tool to create the actual arch. Now, if you haven't seen the episode on the arc tool, go back to that episode. It's one of our first episodes we did. Watch that episode and learn about the arc tool. But for the moment, I'll just give you a brief refresher course. The arc tool is up here in the toolbar, over here in the tool palette. Looks like a little curved line. Or you can use the keyboard shortcut, which is A for arc or arch. So now what I'm going to do is the way this guy works is very much like the line tool. You start at one point, so I'll start up at this point here. And then right now it looks like you're just drawing a simple line. We'll go over to this other point here, the other side of the doorway. It snaps to that corner. Click once. But now we can move this up or down to create our arch. So in this case, because I want this doorway to be 6.5 feet high, and I'm currently at 5.5 feet right here, I'm going to make this 1 foot tall. Like that. Perfect. Now at the moment, this doorway is kind of split up quite a bit, and I could push these guys back individually if I wanted to, but it's a little bit easier to just go ahead and delete the lines. Just 2 deletes and then push it right back. Sound effects are optional. And you can see we now have a nice arched doorway. Very, very nice. You can see that adds a nice little detail touch. It makes your model look very, very personal. Now, here's something very cool that you can do. We could go through the process because we want to do basically the same exact thing on the other side here, on this wall right here. And we could go through the same process again. We could draw more rectangles, we could draw more archways, all that stuff. Basically do it again from scratch. But you don't have to. Let me show you a nice little trick here. If we have our doorway right here and just select the lines that make it up. So for example, we want this line here, this line here, this line here. Don't need to grab the floor line. But you can see now we have basically a two-dimensional outline of the doorway selected here. Now what we can do is we can actually use the move tool to move this out. Now, of course, if we just grab it with the move tool and move it out, then we're going to get this weird alternate dimension-y effect. It's not going to be good. What we want to do instead is we want to copy this. So with the move tool selected, I'm just going to hit the option key to get that little plus symbol. And now I can drag a copy of this line out. Now we want this to be in the same exact location on the other wall, so I'm actually going to lock this to the red axis by hitting the right arrow key. Now I can move it directly across and snap it right up against this wall. Click once, and now those lines have been moved to this wall, and you can see now it's created a separate face for that particular wall. Now in just one step, I have my archway. I can just push it back. And there we go. I now have 2 archways that are in the exact same location as each other. So now you can see if I go down here like this, you can see they're at the exact same position on each wall. So now we've got some nice open archways connecting these 2 rooms. That is very, very nice. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Archways are nice, but what if you actually want to have a door in there? Well, let's do that next. Let's try doing the front door. That's a pretty important piece of a house. Let's see here. So this is where I want the front door to be. And I want the front door to be, a double door. I want it to have not just be a single door, I want it to be 2 doors. So that'd be pretty nice. So just like before, I'm going to start by using a tape measure tool, finding the center. There we go, right there. 4 feet is the center of this. And now, in this case, because I'm going to do the same thing that I did last time, but because I want this to be a double door, instead of just doing 1.5 feet wide, I'm going to go for the full 3 feet wide. So it'll be a full, on each side will be a full 3 foot wide and 6.5 foot tall doorway. So I'll start with the 3 feet by 6.5 feet, enter. So there we go, there's one doorway. And now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, which in this case it's been flipped, so 6.5 feet by 3 feet, boom. There we go, nice doorway. I'll delete this center line here and our guide, and then I'll push this back. Good, so now I've got a nice place where a double door can fit, but how do we model a double door? Well, I've modeled doors in the past from scratch, and while that can be fun to do if you want to, be really obsessive and control everything about your house, it's really not that fun to model, and it's, kind of dull, actually. What I prefer to do is get my doors from the 3D warehouse. Now, if you haven't seen our episode on the 3D warehouse, go back and watch that so that you'll know how it works and how to navigate it. But for now, I'll just show you up here in your toolbar, you have this little thing that has the box with the yellow arrow pointing down. It says Get Models. You can click that, or you can also go to the File menu, 3D Warehouse, and then Get Models. Either way, you'll get this nice little browser. I'll move it to the center so you can see. And now we can search for whatever model we want to download. So let's do a search here. Let's do a search for just door. There we go. And now here are all these search results for doors that people have modeled and uploaded for other people like us to use. So let's take a look at this. We want a double door, so like something like this. It's a very nice front door, but it's just a single door. I'm looking for a double door. Let's see here. Other models you might like. Here's something kind of interesting. That's pretty nice, but still only a single door. Let's go back. Okay, now here's a model that I kind of like. Double entry doors. This is pretty nice looking. Now, keep in mind that once it's in your model, you can edit it and do whatever you want to it. So like we'll probably change the texture and the color and everything, but I really like that. It's got nice double doors, little windows on the side for detail. That's very, very nice. So let's go ahead and download this model. We'll click on Download Model. Click OK. And now it's loaded it in. It's automatically switched us to the Move tool, and now we can position this wherever we want. Now I'm just going to click it outside for the moment. Not in the doorway, just outside. Deselect it. And now we can take a look at the model and kind of get an idea of what exactly it is and which way it's oriented, because you can see like in here, this is obviously the interior of the door. This is where it's supposed to be, because you have the deadbolt locks here, and on the outside you have more intricate handles, and you also have this kind of cool weather stripping kind of thing. So this is a perfect door. I really like it. Now, how are we going to fit this in our doorway? Well, what I like to do is I like to grab a corner of it. So, for example, I'm going to take this corner right here, select my model, switch to the Move tool, and grab it by that corner. And now what I can do is I can actually put it and just snap to this corner right here so it fits in just right. Click once. Now deselect. All right, now here, we've just encountered our first problem. This doorway is too wide. Right? So you can see this thing is just not going to fit at all. And it's highly unlikely that you'll find a door model, because a door needs to fit in a very specific hole. It's highly unlikely that you'll find a door that will fit in whatever hole it is that you have created. Now, as such, what you want to do instead is resize it once it comes in. Now, you could just like download the door, put it where you want it, and then draw a hole to fit it. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm actually going to use one of my favorite tools for this kind of thing in SketchUp, the Scale tool. So I'm going to select this door model. And the Scale tool the keyboard shortcut for it is a little bit confusing. It's either if you're on a Mac, it's Command 9. If you're on a PC, it's probably going to be Control 9. Doesn't really, it's hard to kind of relate that to the scale tool. It's not like the S key for scale or anything like that. So I actually most of the time just go up to Tools, and then in here somewhere, here we go, Scale. So along with Move and Rotate, you have Scale. If we click that, whatever item it is that we have selected in our model gets these green boxes around it. We actually talked about these when in our first episode on the 3D warehouse. But basically, whatever you grab, say I were to grab this green box here, I can now adjust the scale of this model based on this. And you can see it's doing some pretty weird stuff to it. You don't want to go too crazy with this. But if you grab, for example, this one right here, this box is on the very center of this side. If I click this, I can just extend it out or in. And what's very cool about this is the scale tool actually snaps. So for example, I can actually just have this snap until it looks like it's fitting just right inside my doorway. See right there? That looks perfect. So I'll click once. There we go. So I basically just shrunken it a little bit in terms of its width. So it's a little bit skinnier now than it was before, but it's also a little bit too tall. So I'm going to grab it by this box right here, drag it down till it fits just right. Notice it says on edge. Click once. Bingo. So I've just very quickly resized my door to match my doorway. So you can really take a model from the 3D warehouse and tweak it to basically fit wherever you want it to be, wherever you want it. You can see it looks great from the inside. Nice transparent windows. That looks fantastic. And you can do the same exact thing for interior doors and even windows. And I'll show you how to do that next. But right now I want to thank the people who make this show possible, 3D Connection. Now, in my opinion, these guys are just geniuses. They make the Space Navigator, which is a way of navigating through your model in SketchUp that has been my favorite way to do so for many years now. It's just so intuitive. You just grab that little black cap thing on the top, twist it, pull it, push it, just move it in whatever direction you want to move in SketchUp, and you move that way in SketchUp. It's so intuitive. But something that a lot of people don't think of, I think, is that if you're modeling quite a bit, you know, if you're spending several hours a day in modeling, as I sometimes am, your hand can get really tired. I mean, the mouse and keyboard are fine, but when you're doing modeling, it's just, you have to be so intricate, you're hitting keyboard shortcuts like crazy, and if you're navigating through a pretty complex model, your hand and your wrist starts to really hurt, and that can, you know, that's not good for you down the road. And, you know, personally, when I used to model with a mouse, I mean, my wrist would just be killing me by the end of the day. But with the Space Navigator, it just fits in your hand so beautifully. You don't have to grip anything. You just push and pull. You just move your hand wherever you want to move. It's just so great, so comfortable. Your hand doesn't get tired. Your wrist doesn't hurt. It's surprisingly ergonomic. And for 3D modeling, that's a really good thing. If you want to check them out, their website is www.3dconnection.com. I highly recommend their stuff to you. It is an amazing improvement to the SketchUp experience. I want to thank them so much for their support of SketchUp, a 3D toolbox. Now I'm just going to show you one more quick thing, and that is how to do a window. So if I wanted to do a window on this wall, let's say, well, the first thing with a window is because there's so many different sizes and shapes, you want to find the window that you're going after first. So let's do a search for a window. And we don't want anything too complicated. Let's see here. Here's a nice looking window. Very nice. Got some nice detail to it. Perfect. Let's download that. Now, because I don't have anywhere to put it right now, I'm actually just going to stick it outside. But in this case, I actually want to model, I don't want to have to scale the window. I actually am going to measure the window and draw my hole for it accordingly. So I'm actually going to use the tape measure tool and measure this thing. 3 feet high. Very nice. And 2 feet wide. I love it when models are nice and simple. To anyone out there who models stuff for the 3D warehouse, keep your dimensions simple. Don't get me into this, 2 feet and 5/16 of an inch. Make it 2 feet by 3 feet. Makes our lives a lot easier. So let's go ahead and add a 2 foot by 3 foot hole in here. I want the window to start at about, I'm going to say 3 feet. So that's where I want the bottom edge of the window to be here. And then I want it to go maybe, let's do 3 feet from that. Well, 2 might as well. And now where those 2 points intersect, I'm going to start drawing a rectangle. I'm going to have it be 3 feet by 2 feet. Perfect. Push it back. Nice. Delete these guides here. And now I can move my window into place, but you can see my window isn't rotated correctly. So I'll switch to the move tool, and I can grab these little red plus symbols here and just rotate them the way I want it. That looks good. And now I'm going to grab it by this bottom corner right here and just snap it into place right there. And let's see how that looks. Fits perfectly. Perfect. I love that. That is really, really cool. And now at this point, go crazy. Do whatever windows you want, whatever doors. You can have multiple types of windows and doors. Put them wherever you want. Just do whatever you want. Make it your own. And in our next episode, we'll continue modeling our small house. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Sketchup, a 3D Toolbox. I'm having a blast with this new series. Remember that you can go to our website, www.harwoodpodcast.com, and visit the show notes for this episode to download our lesson file. And you can even watch all of our other episodes all the way back to episode 1. Also, if you have any questions or comments for me about the show, you can send me an email. I'm at Cameron@harwoodpodcast.com. Till next time, I'll just say goodbye and good modeling.